Welcome to the Power Platform Show. Thanks for joining me today. I hope today's guest inspires and educates you on the possibilities of the Microsoft Power Platform. Now, let's get on with the show. Welcome back to the Ecosystem Podcast. We're excited to be here again for another episode. This is brought to you by Cloud Lighthouse. And we really want to unpack or revisit, if you like, the whole area of what's going on with AI, particularly in our landscape of what we're doing in our day jobs and how that's impacting. We're not talking about, what new startup is started up in AI and, well, how's the advancement of language models or anything like that. It's really more around what we're seeing in the conversations we're having with customers and stakeholders. So with that, Chris, why don't I throw it to you to kick us off today?
Yeah, thanks, man. I think what's been pretty apparent to me is that, well, obviously the whole freak out about AI has changed the way in which companies and customers see technology. And I think that there's a lot of noise that we've had to cut through, which is starting to get extremely interesting, and a lot of fear mongering we've had to remove. And I'm starting to find that when talking to organizations, half the job is that rather than the technology. Right. It's, in my honest opinion, actually, I think that anything that's going to make people big, shiny bucket loads of money in some way, shape or form, and the media get hold of, it's extremely hard to remove that prejudice against that technology or that thing. Right. So actually the education around artificial intelligence is incredibly important. And what I'm seeing today is every organization I'm talking to, we have to take them through that education layer before we do anything, absolutely anything. So I can walk you guys through later on some of the things that I'm seeing, but that's the trend and the pattern that's going on in my world.
Why don't you just pull that apart at the moment, Chris? What are you referring to? What are you seeing?
So what I'm seeing is that Microsoft have released a fantastic piece of technology in the form of Copilot, which has infused AI in most of their tool sets. So pretty much think about like any tool out there that is worth its salt is going to have some layer or some form of artificial intelligence infused in it, right? The fact of the matter is we've been using this stuff for a long time. Okay, actually a lot longer than we think. I mean, when you look at some of the posts, when you look at some of the articles shared, like even 2018, 2017, this is not new. I mean, we were using embedded AI and Power Apps in the form of ideas like 4 or 5 years ago. PowerPoint had this years ago as well. But the problem is that now that the media has surfaced it, and this OpenAI thing has come out, everyone's like, oh my gosh, AI is going to make my toaster come to life and murder my family. And in actual fact, that's just the media. It's not the technology speaking for itself, right? So I find that when talking to organizations, even about Copilot, the pushback from people, it's pretty damn significant, right? Like them saying, no, I'm terrified of my data being out there. I'm terrified of my data being shared on the internet. I'm terrified of of not being protected. And actually, you know what? Like when you dig into what the tool actually does, it doesn't actually do anything special from a Copilot perspective. All it does is just enhance productivity to an extent. But like it's remediating that fear. That's what I'm struggling with.
Did you guys see and maybe I'm going to take this briefly in a direction that is not what Mark intended, but did you see the lawsuit recently that Elon Musk filed? And when I say recently, this might have been 6 weeks ago, where he alleged, so to cut a long story short, artificial general intelligence, right? That is that's sort of AGI. AGI is the kind of nebulous yardstick that is used to basically say, or maybe I should say the goalpost, right? That once we as a species achieve AGI, right? Like that's AI being able to act totally autonomously across the full range of human tasks. Now, I think that arguably the goalposts keep changing on what AGI is, because if you were to go back 10 years and tell someone 10 years ago what we have now, I think they'd be pretty damn sure that generative AI that is able to pass the bar exam comes pretty close to artificial general intelligence. But in any case,
it's just a shift. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think that we don't fully know yet what AGI looks like. But to cut a long story short, part of Microsoft's agreement with OpenAI basically says that once OpenAI achieves artificial general intelligence, then the licensing to Microsoft is off, right? Like Microsoft can't then take that and bake it into its products. And I think unfortunate move, someone at Microsoft made a claim that, oh, we've reached AGI now, right?
That's an incorrect statement.
It's an absolutely incorrect statement, right? But this of course inspired Elon Musk, who was one of the founders or involved with the founding group of OpenAI, and then stormed off in a huff, as Elon Musk is wont to do. This of course led him to sue OpenAI, right? So anyway, the reason that I brought this up is that I think that my concerns about AI and the fears that I have for AI have shifted, I think, really dramatically from, Chris, what you were talking about a moment ago. Yeah, my toaster is going to come alive and murder my family, or the AI is going to achieve this general intelligence and do something nefarious to the human, matrix-like to the human species. My fear has really shifted more into the realm of what can nefarious humans do with AI.
Yeah. But dude, bro, we come from a fucking race of people who weaponize a walking stick.
Yes.
Yes. That's what we do. That's what humans do. We're super good at weaponizing or doing dumb shit with everything we can find. I mean, if there's a pine cone on the floor, somebody's going to throw it at somebody. If there's a stick, somebody's going to whack somebody with it. It's just another thing that people are going to find to do dumb stuff with.
So definitely not where Mark wanted this to go. I'm sorry. I'll back.
No, but what an awesome pivot, because here's the thing, right? I've spent some time reading the actual court document, because the US is so beautiful at publishing all that stuff.
Well, we take pride in our litigiousness, Mark.
Yes. Here's the thing. My observation, Elon did it as a meme at a large scale.
Elon did something as a meme?
At a large scale, because he can, right? Because here's the thing, is that power move this week, Microsoft, what do? They announce a new startup company that they're going to put $100 billion, I think, into it. I think it's billion. And what is it to do? It's to do quantum computing and AI. And who are the two partners in it? Microsoft and OpenAI. So, okay, let's just move yes, that was that relationship that exists, that, what Elon's suing over, which, as I say, I'm pretty sure it's a meme case, as in it's because, and what's happening is that they just start a new company and people invest in that, and that's got nothing to do. It's like forking code, right? And they've taken in a different path, and I think that's a power move for Microsoft. Back on the topic of some knob saying that they reached AGI. Let's be real, people. When AGI is reached, we will never know about it until about 5 to 10 years later.
Weren't we talking about Panopticon in a different episode?
Right?
Panopticon. Yes, thank you, Anna.
Anybody that says they have AGI is lying. It's marketing. It's bluster. The thing is, the people that reach AGI first, we will find out that we are in a simulation by the time we realize that AGI was reached, right? As in, because they will have basically taken over and manipulated everything, and hopefully in a utopian. And I definitely believe that our future is going to be brighter with not negative. As for privacy, back to your one, Chris, I think we delude ourselves in thinking that we have privacy. And this is one thing. When I was in China, I was in Beijing, walking the Great Wall of China. I was, we had a guide that took us 100K outside Beijing. And Meg and I went on this private tour of the wall that's not commercialized. And of course, as I do, right, I ask questions about what I've heard. Tiananmen Square, everybody spying.
Oh, Mark.
Stuff, right?
Oh, no.
Because I'm in this great wilderness location, right? My drone wouldn't even fly there, right? Everything's locked down. And anyhow, he goes, you've got to understand, Chinese people have no expectation of privacy. We don't delude ourselves with thinking that we have privacy. So it changes the way you think. The problem is, and I'll point the finger at the US here, folks in the US think they have privacy. They're in this false sense of we have
It's the
privacy.
panopticon. It's the panopticon.
And what you have is a device that is leaking stuff constantly. I don't know much about Tucker Carlson, right? I don't know much about that dude, but I listened to the podcast episode with Lex Friedman after he had interviewed Putin and stuff. And he was talking about him as a US citizen, how often he knew that he had been bugged, with like just through the software on his phone. And he knows that he's really got to that opinion that the US government are always monitoring everything he does. And this is the thing, but I think we have this false sense of data privacy, and I just don't believe it exists anymore.
Mark is peddling every conspiracy theory.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Today.
I'm so happy right now. I'm so happy right now. Best thing I've ever heard. And I've got to yell.
But all of these conspiracy theories, honestly, they don't really relate to someone's, I don't know, beer app, tracking app from like I don't know what company, and all of these. I've had many chats with customers or prospective customers about AI within Microsoft, and they're all like, "Oh my God, our data! It's gonna leak everywhere. I'm like, you've got a bunch of data in an Excel spreadsheet with a lot of macros.
It's your own fault.
And in order for you to be able to actually work with it, you need to do like a save as on your own machine, because otherwise it won't open. Like, what are you even talking about?
So this is exactly,
Exactly like you're saying, like, it's a walking stick. I love the analogy. That's exactly what it is, right? Like it accelerates our pace a little bit. I've also been, coincidentally reading about AI this week from a different perspective. I really used to like a lot, Daniel Kahneman. If you know him, he wrote Thinking Fast and Slow, very famous book.
Yeah. Brilliant book.
Yeah, right. So I think he was Israeli, I want to say. I'm not super sure, but he was like super into human psychology. And he was talking about biases and how people, even though they know an outcome isn't going to be achieved, like, for example, we've got an 18 months project to completely redesign our enterprise architecture, right? And they know it normally takes like 3 to 5 years, they know from experience, they know from other examples, they know from the size of their organization or the problems their data have. However, they cannot start the process if they feel like this is gonna happen like 5 years from now. Therefore, they lie to themselves. And the professor comes and says, look, this is where AI is actually going to help us a lot. We're going to be able to make so much better decision making. Our answers to our customers are going to be so much more clear, concise, and precise, that even though AI does have a limitation on maybe human psychology and it doesn't have emotions, etc., and we do need, a level of oversight, and that's why we have all of these guardrails and, security methodology and governance, etc., and we do need to look at like ethical, social implications, responsible AI. The reality is it's still gonna accelerate our work, our thinking, our day-to-day lives by eliminating some of the bias or some of the information that we forget in our human brains. I just loved the way he saw things. This was an article in The Economist.
So it's not a new book he's read or anything like that. It was in The Economist, was it?
Yes, it was in The Economist. He passed away last month, I think. So I think
wow.
that's why they did like a little review of his work. But I thought it was just incredible. Like this person was sitting there and saying, I think, and he was quite elderly. I think he was like 96 or something like that. He was like, AI is going to be fabulous. And I wish I could be here to see it. I wish I will be here to see it.
Yeah.
And like,
I totally agree that I think is going to be our future world.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
They say
Exactly.
that ASI, so artificial superintelligence, which is stage 3, which is the like smaller than humans. I think the date that I heard was 2060. So hopefully, if I do my push-ups and eat my beans, I'll be around to see that.
Well, and we do know that you are at the gym at 5 o'clock in the morning. So
Oh yeah,
you're
man. Yeah. Somebody's got to keep this world alive, bro. You know,
True.
ASI's coming, man.
Chris Huntingford is the one keeping the world alive. Christ's sake.
ASI's coming, Andrew. Somebody's got to defend you lot against the machines. That's why I'm gymming.
I reckon it'll be in the next 10 years.
I think so too. But you know, it's the comfort blanket, right? Like there was this ridiculous theory back in the day. It was a conspiracy site called BOFM, and I don't think it's still alive. So it was Black Ops and fucking Magic, and they were talking about like what they were doing with all the tech in World War One and World War Two, and what NASA were doing and things. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I like the idea that like there is a 10-year progression on tech before we have it and touch it.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you say that because, like, I'll give you the example, right? There's a movie that's called Men That Stare at Goats. It's like a really cool movie with George Clooney, but they were talking about using like all these psychic powers to solve problems. And what's interesting is like the correlation is that years and years ago, when you watch movies like Demolition Man and all that, AI is there, and we're like, oh my gosh, you know, it's science fiction that will turn into science fact.
Yeah.
And even at school, we talk about that, like at the Uni of Birkbeck, when we talk about science fiction, we're like, the propensity for this to happen is actually quite high. Now, being in tech and looking at what actually is happening in the sciences and looking at the movements of narrow artificial intelligence through to general artificial intelligence through to super artificial intelligence, I don't think they're far off, man. I don't think that a lot of this stuff is far off at all.
And you know, Chris, speaking of conspiracy theorists and animals, I heard one recently. You ready for this? Have you heard this?
God, tell me.
I heard that Microsoft MVPs everywhere were turning into T-Rexes.
I heard this as well. Yeah. It's an epidemic, dude.
It's an epidemic.
Wow. Shots fired. Shots fired. My gosh.
I have a question. Like, what possessed you to see a movie that was called Men That Stared at Goats? Like, how?
Yeah, because they talk about, it's really funny. So they were trying to mix psychology, psychic powers, and like all sorts of things with trying to weaponize it really, and trying to find like ways to fuck with people. And it's sort of what Hitler did with the occults, I guess. But it's interesting because like I wanted to see it just because I like psychology and I like the way that people think. And why would you want to do that with something? Like I said, we'll turn a walking stick into a weapon any day of the week.
Yeah.
So I don't like the concept of weaponizing things, but I like learning about why people want to do it.
So I think that this is a very, I mean, I think people really know where we are coming from, but I'd be curious, this thing, artificial intelligence, that we're all, for the most part, very optimistic about, what are our fears? Like, what do we think reasonable, measured fears are? Where is this going in a less positive way?
Let's take a quick break.
Are you ready to transform your career in just 90 days? Join me on the 90-Day Mentoring Challenge and unlock your full potential. As I listen to the podcast, enroll now and get 10% off using the code MBAP. That's MBAP at the checkout. Don't miss this opportunity to learn from industry leaders and accelerate your growth. Visit ako.nz365guy.com and start your journey today. My fear is that religious nuts will want to take us back to the Dark Ages. the people that are right out on, I don't understand left and right wing, but right out on the edge of.
That would be, you got the direction right on that.
Yeah. So that kind of will want to go, listen, let's take us back 10,000 or 1,000 years or whatever, into the good old days type thing, because they fear it so much. So I don't fear the tech at all. I fear the people's, how out of control fear in other people. And, they'll get a messiah that will start taking them and poking them on that journey. And then there'll be a following, and then that's what that would be the only thing. I don't fear anything in the technology or whatsoever.
Fear is the most probably is the most powerful feeling that someone can get. It goes against our very first instinct, right?
I don't know if it's the most powerful feeling. I've had other powerful
Apparently
feelings.
it is.
Tell us more, Mark.
They're different area, but fear,
I'm
I get fear.
extremely excited about digging into this one.
Go for it, Anna. Go for it.
Stop mocking me. There's actually a.
I'm not mocking you.
We're mocking Mark more than anything else.
Yeah,
there's actually a good maybe you've seen it. There's a film on Netflix on the Brexit campaign and how they manipulated people through fear, and how they that was a strategy, and how they were able to target that fear, and how it all worked. So maybe it wasn't the best choice of words here from my side, but definitely, can you imagine? We can see it right now. People are just afraid that AI is gonna take their jobs, and AI is gonna dissipate their data, and AI is gonna control us. But the reality is that right now, if we go back to Microsoft technology or the co-pilots, they're really cool, but they create a power up or they write an email.
It's the spell check of the AI world right now. It really is. I mean, I'm not trying to be rude, but look, the tech is fine. But, when I don't know if you'll remember, but the first example I'll use is on your shitty Nokia 3310 at 2 a.m. in the morning, trying to message your partner at, hey, I love you so much, after 25 beers, and typing the word, duck instead of another word. And it's interesting because
did you just self-edit for the first time?
I did. Yes, me. But yeah, it's weird because when you're going through that process, that clickety-click thing, that autocorrect just automatically happened. We all just figured it out, right? And then spell check, you didn't click the button in Word anymore. It just naturally happened. In a year's time, we're going to be like, oh, well, I don't really remember writing Word documents from scratch. And I think I don't think that that's AI. I think that's just, it's AI, but it's more.
Yeah, a lot of it's automation, right, as well, as it's automating that stuff that we would do manual clicks for in the past. Tell me, what are thoughts on this? Meg and I have been discussing this a bit lately around how you have discussions with C-levels around AI that is not so technical that they glaze over, but is really tangible. One of the things I came up with is this idea that, because it deals with fears, right? And one of the big ones is it's going to take my job. Which is, I think it's like electricity. In the past, I've said it's like, when the car replaced the horse and dray. I don't think it is that. I think it's electricity. Electricity can be extremely dangerous if you grab the wire wrong, or, it's a powerful energy that has been tapped and usable, and it gives us ice in our refrigerator. It gives us hot water in our shower. We can't, lights out. We can't imagine life without it. And all these uses for electricity have been created. And I feel that that's kind of where we are with AI. It's a new thing, but how many jobs has electricity created around the world? Unbelievable amount of jobs, right? Did the wax makers or the oil blubber, processing plants, did they lose their job because nobody needed whale oil to light a lamp anymore? Yeah, sure. A few jobs got lost, but how many more jobs are created because of it? And I think that dealing with that kind of worry about it's going to take my job. Yeah, the job that you have today, but heck, my job that I started my career with was mowing lawns. And I'm quite happy that I'm not in that career anymore. That I updated my skills to move into a different area. And I'm quite happy that a robot now mows my lawns. More power to it. I'm like, did I enjoy mowing lawns? Absolutely. Do I want to do it as a career? No, thank you anymore. And I think that everyone has to learn new skills and keep adapting and evolving. But I think there's going to be more jobs created from AI than necessarily taken away.
I think that history, and particularly the history of technological innovation, definitely bears that out. And I think that is almost certainly likely to be true. But I think that the challenge is that what is true at a macro level can be absolutely life destroying at an individual level or at a community level. Yeah. And let's take this away from AI. A while back, when I think we all thought that maybe we all didn't think, but some people wanted us to think that self-driving cars were closer on the horizon than they have proven to be. One of the thoughts that I had at that time was that this is going to be an absolute catastrophe for at least in the United States, for the long haul trucking industry, right? And the reason that would be such an immense social problem is that being a long haul trucker is it's quite lucrative in a lot of cases. It does not require an advanced technical degree, and many really hardworking folks with families who rely on the income from that particular profession, which, like I said, can be quite lucrative. And so I've intentionally tried to separate this with that analogy from AI, because it's this general pace of technological change that as the pace of technological change increases, right? This is not just happening in AI. I think that the displacement effect is going to be much stronger than in any previous generation of massive and rapid technological change, and that's going to be a big problem for society in the short run.
How is it addressable? How to, one thing why I've always been a big proponent of business applications is because you don't need a degree to get into the space and become very good in this space. You don't need to be really well educated, right? You could, we've seen use cases of receptionists. We've seen use cases of hairdressers. We've seen use cases of people that, mow lawns end up doing really well in this industry. It allows that transfer. Do you think that there's going to be like a transition path for people that, might have very, let's say, labor intensive or manual skills that are going to be left out in the dark? Or do you see it's like the first, second tier of the legal industry, legal secretaries, things like that, they're going to get wiped out? And so I would have thought if you're in that skill frame, surely you could upskill. But then if you were in where you're just purely laborer, roadwork signs, that type of thing, which could easily be replaced by an Android bot in the future, do they have the wherewithal to upskill into a technical role in the future? What's your thoughts, Andrew?
I mean, I don't know if in a technical role, but we do have machinery that make cars and things and big pieces of essential, I don't know, metal or, things that with engines, everything is done automatically, right? That used to be done by hand as well. And somehow people have still survived. So industrial revolutions have been there before. My only question here would be, and I know that Andrew's wanting to share his opinions, how quickly will this happen? Because the difference between this being a true 96% beneficial thing to it creating a big recession spans in how long it will take for those folks to get upskilled, maybe not in a highly technical job, maybe in something else. You just use the electricity example. Not everyone's an electrician, but some people are electricians. Other measure, how strong the electricity is. Others simply make the wire. There are many possibilities here
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
I think a lot about my great grandfather, who, in relation to this topic, my great grandfather left our family's village of Grunsund, Sweden, and he went to America. He went to Boston, and he left with a couple of his brothers. Some of the brothers stayed behind. And he left because there were no more fish. They were fishermen, and the seas in the Skagerrak were out of fish. And he left, and he never had any hope of going back, and he never did. He died far too young in the Boston area. And the being an American with very strong roots in the country where my people came from, Sweden, I think about this a lot because the country where I grew up, the United States, is filled with many, many millions of stories like my grandfather's and like mine. And one of the things that I am troubled it feels to me we have lost at least in Western society, is a sense of being willing to say, there are no fish here, so I'm going to go find something new, right? And I compare this to my experience for about 10 years. My parents moved us to West Virginia, and West Virginia, for people who don't know, is one of the, it's a beautiful place filled with wonderful people, but it scores very low on almost every measure of prosperity that you can imagine, right? It is the least educated, one of the least educated, one of the poorest, one of the lowest GDP per capita, one of the most obese, one of the least healthy. So in almost every way.
But what a great song. What a great song. Like anytime I hear West Virginia, right?
What a great song that we love to sing at Microsoft karaoke nights. But in any case, I look at that state and the hard times that state has had, and I see people who are very, very unwilling to leave. And they're often very unwilling to explore new professional opportunities, right? Because what they want the prosperity of the mid-century to return, and it won't, right? I worry that a combination of a lack of desire to get on the boat and go find a place where there are some fish, combined with the speed at which this technology is evolving, and I think the speed at which displacement may occur in the next 10 years or so, I worry this is going to be a very difficult combination for society and for the economics of society and the social fabric of society to overcome. That is by far my biggest fear for AI. We'll get through it in the end, but I worry about the pain that society will have to undergo and individuals will have to take on as we navigate this.
We've done this though. We've done this before. Like, this is not a new thing. It's just faster. That's the part that terrifies the crap out of me. And Mark, you asked the question earlier, like, what's the fear? The fear for me is the speed. And what I've started to realize is that, I know we've all had an analogy, right? I'm going to give you an analogy, and it's around farming. And years ago, we used to water our crops by going to the water, picking up a bucket or something and walking to the crops and chucking water on it. And now we have like canals and pipes and all sorts of really cool things. And that took a long time to get right. And even like Industrial Revolution and the way that like digital transformation started, where we had like, I think it was Capgemini, they coined the term in around 2014. Like, we're going to digitally transform. We still had around 6 years until the era of enablement, 7 years. Like now, Andrew, I remember you showed me a graph. We're talking like months in between hype cycles now. The speed is terrifying. And I think sitting on your hands is the problem that we're going to have, because it's become so easy for people to not learn, if that makes sense. I mean, the example I'll give you is from a social economic perspective. Look at the UK. We actually are okay with people not doing anything. We're super fine with it. We're like, you know what? You don't have to do anything. We'll just give you a free house and have a lot of babies. Right now, that's not everyone. There are some people that actually need more help. But like, society has become okay with being lazy. That's what I think. Yeah.
It's a hard one when, I do look at the big picture of it, and Andrew, I think, highlighting there that's the individuals that are going to get impacted, and how much larger is that individual group. I remember a movie years ago, and I've never been able to find. I've searched for this quote everywhere, and who is the U.S. general that I think became the U.S. president after the Second World War?
Eisenhower.
Yeah, so I think Eisenhower said this, but I've not been able to find the quote. They had the storming of the beaches, maybe Normandy, whatever it was, and the way it was being acted, they said, like, man, our loss of life was so low. We only lost like 5,000 people. And he turned and he said to that person telling him and said, you've got to realize for their family, it's 100% casualty.
Yes, exactly.
And I'm like, wow, that was so impactful. Yes, when we look at the big, broad picture, it wasn't many, but he said for their families, it's 100% the actual impact. And I think, Andrew, it summarizes what you're talking about there, which is for the individuals that can't move or don't move or whatever. And it reminded me of him and Haw from Who Moved My Cheese, when you purposefully don't see
book.
Things are changing, and you don't proactively move. Someone messaged me yesterday and said, I see change afoot, after I said that I'd resigned. And I said, don't wait until the change happens to you. Get moving. Find your next lot of cheese. Andrew, though, how do you deal with people that don't know how to go find their cheese? Or how do we as a society protect those people?
So I think that first, I want us all to keep in mind, right? We, the four of us here, and probably 98% of the people listening to the show, right? We all work in technology, and for the most part, we love the work that we do, and we feel that it's important work to be done. And I think we love that we're on the forefront of whatever it is that is coming next. I think we need to not underestimate what pricks we can sound like to people who are not in, who are in a perfectly honorable profession, a perfectly necessary and important, and arguably many professions that are more important than ours to the actual functioning of society. And I think that story that you told about General Eisenhower is important. It is an important reminder, right, that folks like us can prognosticate all we want about the brighter future ahead, but to the person or the family who lost a job or who lost a home, that is a 100% loss. So I think that first and foremost, folks like us who work in this space, we need to really kind of fundamentally reorient our thinking, right? And remember that we might get to that bright future, but there's going to be loss along the way. One of the challenging, so then I think we start to look at, okay, what public policies can be put in place, right, to help those who are in some way put out, displaced by this technological change, to help them weather it. And in my experience and in my observation here too, we have some significant challenges because many people are not looking for a handout. I think that there are plenty of people in the world who are looking for a handout and who are looking to do the easiest thing possible. But I also think, I just believe that the vast majority of people want to contribute and they want to support their family and they want to support themselves. So whatever is provided to help those folks who find themselves in an unfortunate situation due to whatever it is, whether it's AI or whether it's autonomous vehicles or whatever it might be. It needs to come as to the greatest extent it can in the form of tools to help yourself, not I society or I the government am here to take care of you. And that's not because we can't, right? The profit and the prosperity and the productivity that I believe will be generated by this era of technological change could very, very well fund the caretaking of large swaths of the population that are displaced by this. But I think we have to acknowledge that large swaths of the population don't want to be cared for. They want to be empowered to care for themselves and for their families.
Yeah.
I agree, and I don't. And the reason I tell you that is because I categorically know that there are some people who do not want to get off their hands. I know that.
I acknowledge that fully.
Yeah. There will always be both, but I think that the ability to earn money has in it it's more than just the money. Your identity, your who you are.
Independence, empowerment.
It's something that defines who you are really for many people. And so I think that, having a cost of living, et cetera, covered or handed out by the government and not being taxed, or the AI becomes taxed and therefore creates this living wage scenario has other implications with it, right? If someone all of a sudden there's no requirement to work 40 hours a week, because everything, your money, but
if there's no requirement to work 40 hours a week and you get given free money, like why would you work 40 hours a week?
Exactly, but then
folks,
where do you get fulfillment,
I would love
right?
to just go write my books. I would love to just go write my books.
Honestly, but the thing is, that's where we're different, right? Is that I would never be in a position I couldn't imagine, just because I have so many projects and hobbies and things that I don't get paid for, that I'd ever be in a position of not having stuff to do that I enjoy doing.
But you'll be paid for that to survive, not to buy that fancy microphone, not to have like pretty lights behind you. You won't have like, I think people, I'm with Andrew here actually. I think people for the majority of individuals do not want to be in that situation. And it's not a pleasure to, eat, just pre-made supermarket food and drink cheap beer and not be able to do what you want to do. So I think for the most part, people do want to thrive through this, but it's still scary because it's very hard.
It's terrifying. Can I tell you, I think without bringing this back to Power Platform, I think that they were.
Chris will always bring it back to Power Platform.
Well, actually, I do love Power Platform, but I don't think that they were far wrong with what they were doing. I actually really liked the message that they put out. I don't know if every street sweeper or person X on the street got a Power Platform job, but it certainly did transform a number of our friends' lives.
Yeah,
100%.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Totally.
And I like, when I look at some of our pals, I just think, holy shit, like these people are way smarter than me, like way smarter. And it's just down to like timing and opportunity. I was just lucky because I was in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
Okay. But sometimes people aren't. So I get that. I really do. And I think with this movement, somehow there has to be some mechanism to drive that same ethos at a wider scale.
I love that.
Well, folks, we're well over time. So let's wrap this up. It definitely went a lot different, this podcast, than what I thought we were going down the path. But it's good. It's good to riff, and it's good to get perspective. Once again, if you're listening or watching this, we want to hear from you. We'd love your opinion. We'd love, we don't want everyone to agree with us. We want people to go call bullshit on what we say and go, you're in an ivory tower or whatever. Challenge us, call us out if we've got shit wrong, right? Because it's collectively we all learn and grow from each other. So yeah, any which way, any channel, you should be able to reach us somehow, some way. We'll be there. and we value your opinion, your insight. And if there's a guest that you think we should have here because you think this person has some insightful thing to say, let us know also. And with that, Anna, why don't you want to wrap things up for us?
You caught me by surprise. I thought you were wrapping us up right now.
That was the wrap.
That was the wrap. Hey, look, just let us know, what do you think about AI? I actually love this episode because it really went into, the real world and our day-to-day lives. And thanks for watching us, and thanks for being with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Hey, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Business Application MVP Mark Smith, otherwise known as the NZ365 Guy. If there's a guest you'd like to see on the show, please message me on LinkedIn. If you want to be a supporter of the show, please check out buymeacoffee.com/NZ365 Guy. Stay safe out there and shoot for the stars.